For my besties who either do not have the time or the inclination to reread, do not worry, because I have reread A Court of Thorns and Roses so that you don't have to, and I've comprised an 8-page document with the cold hard facts that you need to refresh yourself on before you go into ACOTAR 6 and 7. So if you've only been here for a hot second, you may not know that I am a Sarah J Maas super fan. Or I was, up until the release of House of Flame and Shadow, which honestly, don't even want to talk about that book. But every time we're in a Sarah J Maas release year, I make a ton of content about it. And some of the content that I've made in the past include recap videos on my favorite book of all time, House of Earth and Blood, and also the sequel, House of Sky and Breath. The next Sarah J Maas release, however, is going to be ACOTAR 6 in October this year, followed by ACOTAR 7 in January. I know we're all very excited. Me too, but more like cautiously excited at this point. But no matter my feelings on these new releases, one thing you bet I'm gonna do before I get those books in my hands is reread the entire ACOTAR series. And I thought if I was gonna be rereading them anyway, then I may as well also recap them for you guys. And if I misspeak in any way, if I get any of my facts wrong, then we have re-signed up here to correct me. So stay tuned, add these videos to your watch later, and let me tell you everything you need to know going into those new releases. So I have 8 pages here. It's 4 sheets front and back with all of the events of A Court of Thorns and Roses, as well as a couple of things that I've picked out that may be relevant. I do have a small section that I'm going to add at the end of this video, which is anything of note that I have picked up during this reread as somebody who has read everything that Sarah J Maas has published that may give us some sort of information of what we have to come. Now, I will say for this first book, it was very sparse. All of the foreshadowing that I picked up, I also annotated one of my copies for the first time, and I had such a good time doing this. Honestly, it was a blast. Most of the foreshadowing that I picked out in this book is to do with the rest of the series and everything that unfolds, mainly across the first ACOTAR trilogy, as opposed to anything to do with Silver Flames, what might come in the rest of the series, or anything to do with the multiverse. But I thought that I would let you guys know here that I do hope, depending on what I pick up in the next book, to add that section onto all of these recap videos. And if you are somebody who is not completely up to date with Sarah J Maas, then just make sure that you stop this video after the recap portion before we go into those additional notes, which is essentially going to be for all of my pals who are 100% up to date on Miss Maas. But without further ado, let's just crack on. It's a recap video. I know what you're all here for. A Court of Thorns and Roses is an epic romancy series set in a world divided, mainly between the mortal realms to the south and the fairylands of Prythian to the north. This divide is the result of a treaty crafted by 6 mortal queens when the humans rebelled against their high fate overlords after a millennia of slavery. The lands of Prythian are divided into 7 courts, which are the courts of spring, summer, autumn, winter, night, day, and dawn, with a dividing strip of land known as Under the Mountain. Feyre Archeron is immortal, living in the mortal lands, around a 2-day ride from the border of the fabled Fey lands of Prythian. While the mortals do not all believe that the Fey exist, they have many superstitions and rituals to ward them off, including believing that they hate iron and can be killed by the wood from the ash tree. Feyre hunts to feed her father and 2 sisters, which is especially difficult in winter. She comes across a doe that could feed her family for a week or longer, but is surprised to find an unnaturally large wolf also stalking her prey. Although Feyre suspects that the wolf could be a Fey shifter of law, she's desperate, and so she kills the wolf with an ash arrow she keeps in her quiver just in case, skins it, and then takes the doe back to her family. The Archeron family used to be quite affluent until their fortunes changed. At 8 years old, Feyre made a promise to her mother at her deathbed to stay together and look after them, meaning her sisters. Feyre has taken this promise seriously, and when the small amount of money that remained after they left their family estate dwindled to nothing, Feyre went out to hunt for the first time, making her a skilled archer. Her sisters have always relied on her despite Feyre being the youngest, with Nesta being especially vicious about how she shouldn't be expected to do any work, and Elaine being incapable of doing anything just due to a lack of thought. Feyre's father's knees were damaged when creditors ransacked their estate, which has left him unable to work. But the loss of his wife and also his family's current situation has also left him unwilling to work, and he does not intervene when Nesta and Elaine do nothing to help their sister provide for all of them. Feyre's ultimate goal is to live quietly and alone so that she has the time to indulge her love of painting. While she doesn't have the best materials, she has tried to decorate their cottage with painted embellishments on things like the chest of drawers the sisters share, where she has painted violets and roses for Elaine, flames for Nesta, and a night sky for herself. Feyre sells her wolf pelt to a mercenary in the village who warns her that she's heard reports of fairies slipping across the border recently, and it's apparently been getting worse for the last 50 years. That evening, a beast bursts into the Archeron home, declaring them all murderers. The beast reveals that he is from Prythian, and as per the terms of the treaty between the Fae and the Mortals, has come to claim a life in exchange for the life Feyre took when killing the wolf, who was indeed Fae. Feyre confesses that she killed the wolf, and the beast reveals a loophole in the treaty that means Feyre can live out the rest of her mortal life in Prythian instead of being killed. Feyre hesitates, but her father tells her to go, and that if she ever escapes the Fae, she should make a life for herself somewhere else and never come back to her family. Feyre arrives in a Prythian land of eternal spring, where she discovers that her captor, Tamlin, is actually a high Fae male, one of the ruling nobility of Prythian, known for being beautiful, lethal, and merciless. She marvels at the luxury that the Fae live in as she enters the Fae male's manor house, where a feast seemingly fit for human consumption awaits them. In the grand dining room, she meets a high Fae called Lucian, a courtier and emissary with a golden mechanical eye and facial scarring partially concealed by a mask that all of the Fae seem to be wearing. It is clear that Lucian isn't happy that Feyre is here. When Feyre worries about her family starving without her, Tamlin tells her that they are being looked after, but that will cease if she leaves Prythian. The next day, Tamlin tells Feyre that the Fae sentry that she killed, Andras, was in the mortal realm looking for a cure to a sickness that has plagued Prythian for almost 50 years and deeply affected the magic of the Fae. There was a surge in power at the beginning of the Blight 49 years ago during a masquerade ball, which has left all of the Fae stuck in masks. Tamlin also reveals that the treaty between the mortals and the Fae doesn't actually protect the humans, and that the Fae could shatter the wall and march through to kill all of the mortals whenever they feel like it. Feyre seeks Lucian to ride the estate with her, hoping she can use his dislike of her to give her a loophole to the treaty so that she can leave. But Lucian sees right through her immediately. Their conversation turns towards the magical blight, and Feyre asks what may have caused it. Lucian responds, "Something was sent from the shitholes of hell," and then immediately regrets his words, worried about word getting back to her. Feyre discovers that the shapeshifting ability is exclusive to Tamlin, and that most high Fae don't have any specific abilities. During their ride, they come across a bogger, a creature that is unkillable by anybody except Tamlin and becomes real if you look at it. This creature is not native to the Spring Court, but with the Blight, the borders that keep such creatures in check are weakened. Feyre confesses to Tamlin that she doesn't actually enjoy hunting, and so he shows her the Manor's study, where she tries to write a letter to her family warning them that the Blight could spread and affect the human lands. Unfortunately, as she can't read or write, her progress is very slow, and while in the study, she finds a mural depicting the history of Prythian, detailing the great cauldron that poured effervescent gold liquid into the void of the universe to create the land, and also the war between the humans and the Fae that resulted in the humans keeping the south of the world undetailed on this map and the High Fae ruling over the north. Feyre finds Lucian and asks him how to trap a Suriel, a creature that can answer Feyre's questions providing that she can ensnare it. Lucian humors Feyre despite knowing it will be dangerous. The Suriel tells Feyre that Tamlin is the High Lord of Spring and that she should stay with the High Lord. When she asks about the Blight, he tells her of a wicked and powerful king across the western seas on the island of Highburn. The king of Highburn was not happy with the treaty and resents that he was forced to sign it, so he sent his most trusted and loyal commanders to Prythian as spies. But almost 50 years ago, one of them, known as the Deceiver, disobeyed him. The Suriel has to cut his story short as they are attacked by another deadly type of fairy called the Naga. Feyre sets the Suriel free before she flees. Tamlin is shocked when Feyre shows mercy and compassion towards a dying summer court fairy he tries to save. She tells him that everyone, human or Fae, deserves to have somebody hold their hand while they die, and she apologizes for killing Andras. Tamlin and Lucian take Feyre to spend an afternoon in a glen with a pool filled with starlight. Tamlin and Feyre swim, and Tamlin reveals that Lucian is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court. When Lucian was younger, he fell in love with a fairy girl that his family thought was beneath him, him, and so they executed her in front of him, and 2 of his brothers followed him across the border when he tried to leave. Lucian killed one and Tamlin the other as they had crossed into spring, and then Tamlin took Lucian in. They also discuss how Feyre's father lost their family fortune by placing all of their wealth on 3 ships that sank. Tamlin gives Feyre supplies and somewhere to paint, and they grow closer as they spend more time together. Feyre learns that Tamlin's parents were mates, and while his mother loved his father deeply, his father was a tyrant and kept human slaves. A High Lord of a different court killed his family, and while he mourns his mother, he does not miss his father or his brothers. Tamlin and Feyre return home from a walk to find that they have a guest that Tamlin tells Feyre to stay out of sight of. The visitor is invisible, but gives Tamlin and Lucian a warning that she is not happy with them. Feyre is warned to stay away from Calanmai, an annual fire festival hosted by Spring to generate magic for the coming year. Feyre hears the drum beats from the festival and goes to explore, where she is once again cornered by a group of Naga. The most beautiful man she has ever seen rescues her, saying, "There you are. I've been looking for you," which scares the Naga away. The stranger is unmasked, meaning that he is from another court, and asks Feyre why she, as a mortal, is at the festival. She lies to him, but he sees through her and offers to escort her somewhere, which she declines. Wandering back into the festival, she sees Lucian, who immediately deposits her back at the manor house, telling her that on Calanmai, Tamlin will allow great and terrible magic to enter his body, which will lead him to claim a female and perform the ritual that will generate magic to fuel the growth of crops in the Spring Court. Lucian lectures her on the danger of her attendance, as the magic would have caused Tamlin to seek her out while he was out of control. After the ritual ends, Feyre heads to the kitchen for a snack and encounters Tamlin on her way back to her room. He pins her against the wall and tells her that her scent drove him crazy before the rite forced him to claim another. He bites her neck, which she enjoys, although she does berate him for it later, and then they go their separate ways. Feyre and Tamlin continue to spend more and more time together, and so Tamlin removes the glamour that makes all of the fairies of the Spring Court invisible to Feyre. Feyre goes out to paint in the garden and finds the head of a fey male skewered to the top of a fountain by a member of the Night Court. Tamlin and Lucian express their disdain for the High Lord of Night. During the summer solstice celebration, Feyre drinks a lot of fairy wine purely because Lucian tells her not to, and spends all night having a blast. Tamlin plays the fiddle and she spends most of the evening dancing before Tamlin takes her to a clearing to watch the will-o'-the-wisps sing and dance before they kiss for the first time and watch the sunrise together. During lunch, the Spring Court is visited by the stranger that saved Feyre from the Naga on Calanmai, who she discovers is Rhysand, the High Lord of the Night Court. Lucian glamours her so that Rhys can't see her. Rhys has seemingly just come to taunt Lucian and Tamlin, and Lucian calls him Amarantha's whore. As Rhys is about to leave, he notices that the table is set for 3 and realizes that Lucian has glamoured him. He uses an ability that feels like claws on Feyre's brain to read her mind and taunts Tamlin with her thoughts about him before telling Tamlin that it's a shame that it's too late because she would have been the one for him and that Amarantha will enjoy breaking her. When Rhysand asks Feyre for her name, she tells him it is Claire Bedor, a girl from her village. Rhys leaves, telling them he looks forward to seeing them all under the mountain. Tamlin comes to Feyre in her room to tell her that he is sending her home to keep her safe, and they spend the night together. The morning after, he tells her he loves her as she leaves in a carriage back to the mortal lands where her family now live in a grand home. They think that she's been looking after a rich dying aunt and has now inherited her wealth, and shortly after she left, her father's ships were miraculously found and the profits recovered. Elaine plants flowers and organises balls. Nesta reveals to Feyre that her iron will stopped Tamlin's glamour from working, and so she knew that the dying aunt story was a lie and tried to follow Feyre to Prythian to bring her back, but she couldn't make it through the wall. Feyre hears that Claire Bedor's house was burned down with her family trapped inside and realises that Rhysand must have told Amarantha the false name that she gave him. She decides that she's going back to Prythian to try and help Tamlin face down the blight. Nesta reinforces her father's original message to never return because they don't need her. This time Feyre takes it as a gift of freedom as opposed to being offended. She tells Nesta that if it is ever safe, she will come back for her because there is a better world out there. And Nesta tells her not not to bother, as she doesn't think that she would like fairies. Feyre arrives back in the Spring Court to find Tamlin's manor has been ransacked, with the gates bent inward and the doors hanging off their hinges. The tapestries and chandeliers have been ruined as though an army tore through. The only person left in the manor is Alice, who tells Feyre that Amarantha has taken Lucien and Tamlin under the mountain. Here, Feyre learns all about this legendary Amarantha, who has appointed herself as the High Queen of Prythian and has taken Tamlin because the 7 times 7 years are over and he has not shattered her curse. 100 years ago, Amarantha arrived as an emissary from Hybern, claiming to make amends for the actions of Hybern during the war and her own actions as Hybern's most lethal general. Amarantha's sister Clythia was as vicious and wretched as she, but she fell in love with a mortal warrior called Durian, who used her for information. Amarantha could see Durian's deception, but Clythia would not leave him, and Amarantha would not kill him for love of her sister. Durian tortured and butchered Clythia when he finally got the information that he wanted, and since then Amarantha has hated humans, causing her to butcher her own slaves rather than to free them when the treaty was signed. Clythia promised Durian that he would live, and so after torturing him for weeks, Amarantha preserved a finger bone that she wears around her neck and one of his eyeballs that she wears in a ring to keep him alive even now. The High Lords believed that she had changed when she came back to Prythian as an emissary, but her true motive was that she wanted Prythian for her own to use as a launching point to eventually destroy the human world. 49 years ago, she gathered all 7 of the High Lords who now trusted her at a ball that was being held in her honor, and she slipped a potion into their wine that paralyzed them and allowed her to steal their magic. With their powers diminished, she wrested controls of their lands quickly. Amarantha desired Tamlin, but he never trusted her, and she carved out Lucien's eye when Tamlin sent him to negotiate for peace. She then hosted a masquerade ball to make amends for what she'd done to Lucien. During the masquerade, she claimed that peace could be had if Tamlin joined her as her lover, which he refused, stating that he would rather marry a human than touch her. Amarantha was furious and told Tamlin that if he could find a fairy-hating human girl who loved him with her whole heart in 49 years, then she would break the spell she had put upon him to steal his power. A condition of the curse is that the girl had to have killed a fairy from the Spring Court so that Tamlin could understand Amarantha and Clythia's pain. And so he's been sending his sentries across the border to be killed one by one for half a century. There is no clause in the treaty that a human life has to be taken for a fairy life claimed. Tamlin made that up to bring Feyre back to Prythian as a last-ditch attempt at breaking the curse. Feyre regrets leaving without telling Tamlin that she loved him, as this would have broken the curse, so she demands that Alice takes her under the mountain. Alice takes her to a cave leading under the mountain and tells her not to make any deals unless her life depends on it and not to trust anyone, even Tamlin. She also told her that there is still one part of the curse that she can't tell her even now, and so Feyre will have to figure out that part on her own. The ACOTAR catches Feyre sneaking under the mountain and takes her to Amarantha, where Feyre declares that she is here to claim the one that she loves. The body of Claire Bador has been pinned to the wall of the throne room, and Amarantha makes jokes about how they tortured her. Amarantha finds Feyre's presence hilarious, and so she agrees to break Tamlin's curse and free him and the entire Spring Court, providing that Feyre completes 3 tasks, one on every full moon, or answers a riddle. Feyre agrees. Amarantha's cord beat Feyre into unconsciousness, and she wakes up in a dungeon where she is visited by Lucien, who heals the worst of her wounds. Feyre is then dragged before Amarantha again, where she is forced to tell Amarantha her name to stop Rhys from torturing Lucien. Amarantha then gives Feyre the riddle she must solve before sending her back to the dungeon. For Feyre's first trial, she's thrown into a maze-like trench where she has to slay the Middengard worm. When she realizes that the worm is blind, she uses the bones of its victims to set a trap for it, before coating herself in mud to disguise her scent. She then cuts her hand to bait it into chasing her through the maze to its lair, where it is impaled on the bone spikes Feyre set up earlier. Unfortunately, she didn't quite time her jump right, and a spike of bone went right through her arm. Upon winning the trial, Feyre hurls a bone spike at Amarantha, flicking mud up her dress. The wound in Feyre's arm very quickly becomes infected, and she develops a fever. The next visitor to her cell is Rhys, who offers to heal her arm, providing Tamlin that she spends 2 weeks of every month in the Night Court after she's completed these 3 trials. She reluctantly agrees after negotiating him down to 1 week. As per the customs of the Night Court, the bargain manifests as a tattoo covering her left hand and forearm. Part of Feyre's bargain with Amarantha was that she would do random household tasks to earn her keep between trials. The first of which is to clean a white marble floor with a bucket of dirty water. Lucian's mother uses her magic to make the water clean as a thank you for sparing Lucian's life. Her next task is to separate lentils from the ash in the fireplace of Rhys's bedroom. He returns while she's mid-task and she asks him if all of the High Lords are shapeshifters. He answers by transforming himself, with his hands and feet becoming tipped with talons and 2 large membranous bat-like wings sprouting from his back, while the rest of him remains High Fae. He then uses his power to separate the lentils from the ashes, and when the guards come to collect Feyre, he compels them to leave her alone and stop giving her chores. Rhys sends 2 fairies with the ability to walk through walls to wash and bathe Feyre in preparation for a midsummer party. They use body paint to continue the pattern of the tattoo all over her body and clothe her in a white gauzy dress. Rhys tells her that the body paint is so that he can see if anybody has touched her. When they get to the throne room, Rhysand announces in front of Amarantha and Tamlin that Feyre is to spend 1 week of every month with him in the Night Court. Rhys encourages her to drink the wine and she wakes up in her cell later feeling nauseous and dizzy. Lucian comes to see her and tells her she spent all night dancing for Rhys or sitting on his lap. He chastises her for making a bargain with Rhysand instead of waiting for him to come and help her. Night after night, Feyre is dressed and paraded before the court for entertainment, using wine to blot out her memory. One night, a High Fae from the Summer Court is caught trying to sneak out, and Rhysand is asked to use his mind-reading powers to discover his motive. Rhys claims that he is just a coward that wanted to leave, but Feyre thinks that he's lying when she sees that the High Lord of Summer is visibly relieved. Amarantha orders him to shatter the male's mind, which seems to take a toll on him. Feyre's second task is to answer a question inscribed on the wall of the puzzle chamber and select the lever corresponding to the correct answer before time runs out and both her and Lucian are skewered to the floor by the spikes slowly lowering from the ceiling. This is a problem as Feyre cannot read, so she has to try and guess which lever is the right one. Rhys uses his power to cause her pain if she reaches for the wrong lever, guiding her to the correct answer. The increasing pressure of her time under the mountain is wearing Feyre down, and Rhys speaks into her mind to tell her not to let Amarantha see her break. Feyre later breaks down in her cell, where Rhysand visits to taunt her, effectively distracting her from her spiral. When Rhys's shadowy handmaidens are escorting Feyre, they hide behind a tapestry to eavesdrop on the ACOTAR, who is conversing with a stranger. The stranger says that the King of Highburn will not forgive Amarantha if she neglects to aid his cause a second time. As Feyre sinks further into despair, music travels through the vents into the dungeon, mentally transporting her away from her misery. The eve before Feyre's final trial, Tamlin manages to get out of Amarantha's eyesight for long enough to make out in a closet with Feyre, where Rhys catches them. He makes Tamlin leave and then kisses Feyre just before Amarantha discovers them, with Tamlin at her side. Amarantha mocks Feyre for being a fickle human. Later, Rhys joins Feyre in her cell and complains about Amarantha. He impresses upon her the importance that she wins her final trial and confesses that he's been doing everything he can to aggravate Tamlin so that when his power is restored, he's so mad that he kills Amarantha on the spot. He tells Feyre that Amarantha targeted him because his father murdered Tamlin's family, so she wanted to humiliate the son of her friend's murderer, and also because he's pretty. Feyre enters her final task with the support of most of the fairies trapped under the mountain, who have waited a long time for their freedom. Her task is to kill 3 High Fae that have been brought in with bags over their heads. Feyre reluctantly proceeds with the task until she gets to the last person, who turns out to be Tamlin. Feyre faces the choice to kill Tamlin and free the Spring Court and herself, or die and allow the Fae to remain enslaved. Remembering Alice's advice that she wouldn't be able to trust her senses and also to listen carefully, Feyre remembers her months in the Spring Court and how Tamlin allowed her to eavesdrop every time somebody visited so that she could glean the information that he was forbidden from telling her. Feyre recalls that multiple people have said that Tamlin has a heart of stone and realizes that Amarantha wants Tamlin above all else, so it would be stupid of her to allow Feyre to kill him. Feyre realizes that this must be how Amarantha is able to control the High Lord's magic, and so she stabs Tamlin in the heart and wins begins her final trial. A fairy in the crowd calls for Amarantha to free them, and she says that she will when she feels like it, as Feyre did not specify when they had to be freed. Amarantha flies into a rage and attacks Feyre. Rhys tries to stab Amarantha with one of the ash daggers, but she senses him coming and blasts him away with her power. Tamlin starts to crawl towards Feyre, but his wound is healing too slowly, and so he begs Amarantha to stop hurting her. As she lays dying on the floor, Feyre reflects on how her love for Tamlin is something that she will not sacrifice, even after everything else she has sacrificed to survive. In that moment, she realizes that the answer to Amarantha's riddle is love, breaking the curse on Tamlin and the Spring Court instantly. Amarantha breaks Feyre's spine. We then see through Rhys's eyes as Tamlin rips Amarantha's throat out while the rest of the Spring Court hold back her guards. Amarantha's death releases any hold that she had over the other High Lords. So each of the High Lords of Prythian donate a drop of their power to resurrect Feyre as a thank you for freeing them. Feyre wakes up on the floor of the throne room, healed, and now an immortal High Fae, and she seeks solace in Tamlin to chase away the memories of what she has endured under the mountain. In the middle of the night, Feyre wakes to a tugging sensation that she recognizes as Rhys summoning her to a balcony overlooking the mountain. She asks why he helped her, and he says he wanted to stand on the right side and fight back against Amarantha and didn't want Feyre to have to die alone. Rhys says goodbye and starts to fade into the shadows, locking eyes with Feyre at the last moment, and pure shock fills his face before he disappears. Tamlin and Feyre, both deeply traumatized, return home to the Spring Court. Thus concludes A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I am going to be diving into just the couple of notes that I have, or things that I noticed when I was reading this book. So as I have mentioned, if you've only read ACOTAR, or if you're not completely up to date on Sarah J Maas's books, then please skip this and feel free to come back later. But I hope that my recap was helpful to prepare you for the next installments in this series. I only have two notes to cover, really. The first one is that obviously right now we're anticipating Elaine's story as well as Asriel and Morrigan, and there are a lot of theories as to what direction Elaine's going to go in. Now, my leading theory was always that Elaine belonged in Spring. I don't think she's going to end up with Asriel. I don't think that she's going to end up with Lucien. I did think that she was going to be part of Tamlin's redemption arc. However, given Sarah J Maas's interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast, I'm now not so sure about that, but we know from Feyre's character arc as well as Nesta's that these symbols that Feyre painted on the drawers of their cottage have been relevant to their futures somehow. So I mean, Elaine, she's a simple gal, she likes plants, and the fact that Feyre painted roses and violets on her drawer could literally just indicate that. She did do flames for Nesta, which obviously her book is called A Court of Silver Flames, and the night sky for herself, which obviously signals the fact that she belongs in the Night Court. So throughout the course of this book, I was looking for any references of those flowers, the roses and the violets, and something that I did notice is that there are a lot of flowers mentioned in this book. We do have roses, which of course is also in the title of this one. There are crocuses, there's foxgloves, there's a whole ton of stuff like while Feyre is in Spring, because obviously it is a very like floral heavy court. Not once are violets mentioned, which I thought was interesting, but I do still think that there's a possibility that Elaine could belong in Spring. So then I was thinking, do we know of any off-world Spring Court fae? You know how we know of some fae in other series who look a lot like Rhysand? Do we know of any fae who look like they would belong in the Spring Court? I do not have an answer for that yet. It's something I'm going to be looking for going forward throughout my reread. But if you know of anybody who would fit that bill, let me know down below in the comments. Be sure to mark your spoilers as well for anybody who's just here for the ACOTAR recap. The second thing of note is, I don't know how much of note this is. It's just a thought that I had while reading with the hindsight of having read everything that Sarah J Maas has published. I truly, from reading this book, don't think that she had a multiverse in mind or concretely planned at the time that she was writing this first ACOTAR book. As I said, all of the foreshadowing is mainly just relating to the series to come, and the world is very, very limited in book one in comparison to what we know about the world from the books that follow. Even A Court of Mist and Fury and Wings and Ruin massively expand this world, but this did not have a lot of material to go on. But I did notice we had quite a few references to the world in this one, obviously because Feyre Feyre is learning about the Fae, she's learning about Prythian, and multiple times we mentioned the world, Prythian, and the High Lords. One of the first examples we get of this is when she's in Tamlin's study and she's looking at the big mural on the wall, which details the creation of the world. It then details the war between the humans and the Fae and shows how Prythian was split up afterwards with just 7 courts and 7 High Lords. That map does not mention a Dusk Court, and that is the only thing that I can think of, an only element of foreshadowing that is included in this book that there is more to come, because just logistically, and I said this like way back when, I think I have a theory video of how all of the worlds might be connected that I posted, I think before House of Sky and Breath, but like having 7 courts when all of the others are balanced, like 4 seasons, we have 3 times of day, it just logistically doesn't make any sense that there isn't a Dusk Court. That is not addressed at all in this book. The map on Tamlin's wall, no mention of dusk. The Sorial mentions 7 High Lords. He doesn't mention anything about an 8th court, even though he's described as being older than the bones of this world. And Alice, when she's talking about Amarantha declaring herself High Queen, says that they've never had this happen before and that it's always been 7 High Lords, even though I'm pretty sure at some point in the ACOTAR series we start talking about a High King. All things that I'm going to be looking for and picking up on during this reread of the series. This is the 4th or 5th time that I've read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this is just like a comment on my experience reading the book this time. I forgot how untraumatized Feyre is. I have always been a fan of this first book. When I first read it, I was a Tamlin stan. Every time I reread it, based on just what you learn about Tamlin in this book, without any of the information that we learn about him to come, I'm always a Tamlin stan, and I was like, damn, can you imagine how it could have been had they not gone under the mountain and both of them been deeply traumatized? Look at what we could have had. And in my mind, this book exists separately to the rest of the series. So we have ACOTAR as a standalone, which is Feyre and Tamlin happily ever after into the sunset, and then starting from A Court of Mist and Fury is a completely different series to me. But it was just so refreshing to see Feyre just so at peace, to set down the burden of having to look after her family, who every time I reread this book, I find Lucian funnier and Nesta more terrible. But given that I've now read Nesta's entire story, I even appreciate her more, although I always have appreciated her to a degree with how honest and like straight talking she is. But having Feyre set down this burden and just allow herself to breathe for a moment because she's oblivious of like the grand scheme of what's going on around her was really great to see. And I remember there's this like scathing review on Goodreads. It's a 5-star review of the book, but it's like dragging Feyre to the depths of the earth. I wrote it. It's my review, by the way. It's mine. I wrote it. I love Feyre now. I don't know, is that maturing? Is that growth? Is that what's happened here? But yeah, they are all of the comments that I have on A Court of Thorns and Roses. I am going to be back next month with my recap of A Court of Mist and Fury. Once again, with any additional things that I noted throughout the rereading process and any theories that I may have or little nuggets of information I've unearthed that may pertain to the future of this series. But I do hope that you have enjoyed this one. If you have, don't forget to show your appreciation down in the comments. But if you don't feel like you have anything to say, leave me a rose emoji, of course, for the title of this book. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this one if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find links to my Goodreads, my Instagram, my Patreon, and my TikTok in case you want to follow me on any of those. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.